Wednesday night. Pretty sure I did. 140, 141, 142, 143 are all Psalms attributed to David. And all four of these Psalms have the same kind of storyline. David's in a difficulty. David's in a trouble. And he's crying out to God in prayer. We can see that. 140, deliver me. 141, Lord, I cry unto thee. 142, I cried unto the Lord. 143, hear my prayer. O Lord, give ear to my supplication. So you get the idea. It doesn't really, we can make our suppositions of what might be behind or the backstory of these particular Psalms. We mentioned it last week in 140. We'll say some of the same things tonight in 141. David had a lot of issues in his life that could have been very heavy burdens on his life. It could have been Saul's situation. You've got a king who's got power, who's got an army, and he's trying to kill you. That could be really heavy burden. You have a son, Absalom, that has been standing at the gate and kind of disparaging you and ends up gaining power in the kingdom, and you end up having to flee, to the mountains, so to speak. So you get the idea that he had a lot of burdens in his life. So again, what David is teaching us, and again, this is in the section of the Psalms about worship. So all four of these Psalms relate to us that even when we're struggling, and that doesn't mean necessarily if you're struggling or in trouble or in distress, you need to keep going to church. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You should. But you also just need to be worshiping God daily. And worshiping doesn't mean that you're always necessarily just overly happy with what's going on in your life. But you're still very confident in your hope in God getting you through this. So these Psalms are in the worship section of Psalms, teaching us that even during trouble or struggles and opposition, you're still praying, you're still singing, you're still worshiping. All these things go together. So this is the second Psalm in these four Psalms that deal and reflect experiences in the life of David that were kind of difficulty. These are humble, honest prayers. I love the honesty that's in 141 because he's praying about the conflict in his life, very similar to 140. 140 kind of came from the aspect like he was a bird or an animal and his enemies were trying to catch him. Well, in 141, at the end of the psalm, he uses some of the same words, imagery in the latter part of the psalm, but he's more introspective, thinking about himself. He's asking God to protect his mouth, like to watch his mouth. So 141 is a very honest, humble prayer from a man crying out to God. So let's dive in. We're going to see three things tonight, or four things tonight. Verses 1 and 2. First two verses, and I'm just calling this David cries out to the Lord. Lord, I cry unto thee, make haste unto me. Very personal, unto me. I know at one time there were 600 men in a cave with him. I can't imagine what that was like. It tells us they were kind of disgruntled men, so you can imagine what that place was like on a regular basis. But this is very personal. There might have been other people involved in some of his struggles, but he's asking God to help him personally. Give ear unto my voice when I cry unto thee. I'm satisfied he had talked to other people for help. He had probably shared other people the issues that he was going through, just like we do when you're going through things in life. You ask other people to help you, pray for you, encourage you, and you appreciate them coming by, text or call or a meal. But he's in a place where he understands, like he's reminded us of many times in the Psalms, that my real help comes from God. There's things my wife cannot do, my friends cannot do, my church family cannot do. I cannot do for myself, but God can do for me. So Lord, I cry unto thee, make haste unto me, give ear to my voice when I cry unto thee. You see how personal this is between God and him. I need you to hear me. Right? You You ever sometimes want to grab your little kid's face sometimes and say, look, you need to pay attention to what I'm telling you. This is David getting God's face. I'm talking to you. I need you to help me. Look at verse 2. Let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Now I've entitled this psalm, Mine Eyes Are Unto Thee, O God the Lord, which comes out of verse number 8. But boy, this second verse really gives you the heart that he has in bringing these petitions before God. We learn in verse 1 it's urgent. It doesn't mean necessarily that you can speed up God and his providence, but you can ask him to. I've learned over the years that you can ask God for anything as long as you kind of bathe it in your will be done. So he is saying, Lord, I want you to hear me, and I want you to give me a quick answer. In mercy, quick. Back to verse 1 before we dive into verse 2. The word cry is used twice. And the idea here is not like crying. Now, he might have been crying, but the element here is just a loud voice to God when you feel like you're under heavy pressure. So again, this is a cry of someone in a desperate situation. Sometimes our prayers are painful and feeble. Like Romans tells us sometimes that all we can get out is a groan, or even we don't know the words to kind of articulate the problem that we're in. All of that can be understood in the cry of a Christian. That's great. If I don't put, like, sometimes you have a conversation with your mate, like, what's wrong with you, honey? Nothing. Well, can you articulate? Well, I just can't put it into words. Well, if you don't put it into words, I can't help you, right? Guess what? If you can't put it into words for God, he gets it. Because he gets your heart. He sees your burden. He sees the turmoil in your head. He knows all of the stuff going on in your life. So that's what's great about verse 1, that even when it's as desperate and maybe as feeble as just crying to God, he longs to be heard. And he longs to be heard quickly. Now let's look at verse 2. It says he set forth his prayer before God as incense. The word set forth has the idea of like what he was doing with the incense. Now the incense, they really worked hard at making sure that incense was pure. And then there would be like different things that they would do to prepare that incense before it was burned before the Lord. And it would fill that room with the fragrance. It would get heavy in there with the smell in the holy place, which is like an indication of prayers being made to God. It's not like telling me I can't be so desperate that I just, in the middle of something, just cry out to God. But it's just reminding us also that when we get to pray, we get to talk to God. So he's reminding us of preparing ourselves to pray sometimes, in the presentation of our prayers. Our times of prayer is a personal meeting with God. And when you're conscious of that, it can't help but encourage you. There might be times I can't get in touch with my wife, or my wife me, or you me. But there is never a time that you will not get the ear and the attention and the focus of God. So we need to be reminded that we have the privilege of bringing our petitions to God, and it fills his presence with an aroma. Listen, there's nothing like a kid asking you for something you can do. It's frustrating and difficult sometimes when your child asks you for something, or a loved one asks you for something and you can't do it. Maybe it's beyond financial abilities, or maybe it's just beyond emotional abilities, right? Well, God has no problem meeting all of our needs. So again, our prayers are like an aroma to God. He also says, lifting up of my hands at the evening as the evening sacrifice. The evening sacrifice would have been sacrifices of like Thanksgiving sacrifices, when they would be appreciative for their access to God through sacrifice. So it's the humble attitude of, I get to talk to God, right? I mean, you couldn't be clear to talk to so many people on the planet. You're not getting close to some people on the planet unless you know somebody. Unless you have an in. There's some people you ain't going to get to talk to. You ain't going up to that floor. It's not going to happen. God, 3 o'clock in the morning, I can fall out of my bed under a burden, and my God's ear is right there, right? My God's attention is right there. All I got to do, like those people at the side of the road, was crying out to the Son of Man, Jesus. And what did he do? Jesus stood still. What an overwhelming, humbling reality is I can gain the attention of the sovereign God of the universe. He's never too busy to give me his undivided attention. So that evening sacrifice, man, when I come to God, I need to be reminded of I've got an audience with the God of heaven, and the humbling reality of I get to do that. Lifting up of my hands is an evidence of holy hope. Now, what I've read on this is they would lift their hands palm up to receive. It's almost like a kid asking for his allowance. Did I do my work good? So again, there was an expectation of God's answer. So there's a lot in those first 2 verses as David cries out to God. Second thing, here's where David gets a little specific about his prayer. David's petitions to the Lord. Psalm 141 in verses 3 through 6. And here's what he says in verse 3 and verse 4. Set a watch. Now that doesn't mean like a watch on your arm, but like you put your eyes on something for me. I want you to set a watch. Now what he's saying is that I can't do this on my own. Listen, when Charity was growing up, and now here I am talking about her on Facebook Live. She's going to get me tonight. Like when she had an alarm clock in her bedroom, but it did her absolutely no good. I'm just telling you, it went off at the right time, and it was annoying in sound, but it did not get her up out of bed. I would have to go there on numerous occasions, and she would tell me, I'm up. I said, no, you're awake, and there's a difference between awake and up, 2 different things. What he's saying is, I can't do this. And so God, oh Lord, I need you to set a watch. What? Before my mouth. Keep the door of my lips. Incline not my heart. So he's gone from the outside to the inside, and the heart is connected to the mouth, right? From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So the mouth and the heart are connected. So God, I don't need you just to put the hinges on my mouth, but I need you to incline not my heart to any evil thing. So watch my mouth, guard my heart, because I don't want to practice wicked works with men that work iniquity. And let me not eat of their dainties. And that just simply means I don't want to be satisfied with flesh stuff. I don't want to be satisfied with sin stuff. Because you can be. There's pleasure in sin for a season. You can be. But I don't want that. So let's kind of dive into these 2 verses. David's getting really specific on the inside of his prayer life. He's not praying so much for the circumstance of his trouble outside of him. He's saying, God, I just want you to make sure that while I'm in this trouble, my mouth don't do nothing bad. Sometimes when we get in a real trouble sometimes, we will say some really goofy stuff. I have. I'm not talking about y'all. I'm talking about me. When I get to struggling, sometimes what's going on in my head and my heart ain't good, and I don't need my mouth to be open. So that's exactly what he's asking God to do. God, I'm concerned about my heart and about my mouth. And even later in that verse 4 about my actions. I don't want to be practicing wicked works. And so, God, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. I need you to rule. That set of watch, it's almost like the word, it's not exactly, but it's somewhat like the word judgment, like the word of the umpire, out or safe. I want you to rule what goes out of my mouth. I want you to be the one that's ruling that. When to open it and when to shut it. And I want you to guard my heart. So I don't want these times of trouble to get my mouth saying things that it don't need to say. And I don't want these wicked men or wicked ideas and thoughts to lead me away from the right path. And again, it kind of reminds you of Psalm 140, and it kind of reminds you of what Jesus said in the Lord's Prayer, the disciples' prayer, lead us not into temptation. There's going to be stuff that happens in life. You might work with somebody. You might be where you have to, spend time with somebody that is not a believer and they do wicked things. And sometimes you can be tempted to be involved in that. If you're playing on a ball team or if you're working with someone or going to school with someone, it happens. So what he's saying is, I don't want anything in my life or the providence of God or the situations of my life or the struggles of my life, not only that my mouth would say and do wrong things, but I don't want to be led in the wrong direction. Now, here's something you need to understand. He's asking God to help his heart stay in the right place. Because if my heart's right, then my mouth is going to be right. And really my hands are going to be right, and my feet's going to be right. So he's asking the Lord to guard his heart. And whoever has your heart has you. That's why Proverbs tells me to guard my heart. And in order for me to guard my heart is to feel my inner man. And the heart's not that blood pumping thing inside my chest, but me. The real me on the inside, what drives me, the passions that I have, the desires that I have, the wants that I have, the aspirations that I have. Let God drive those things. If the heart and the tongue are under God's care, then all is safe. The way the heart inclines, that's why he's saying in verse 4, that word incline means to lean in. So if my life is leaning into the Bible, that's a good thing. If I'm leaning into Jesus stuff, good thing. If I'm leaning into church, good stuff. If I'm leaning into righteousness, good stuff. But if I'm leaning towards evil, then eventually I'm going to practice evil. If the fountain or the heart of my life is not pure, then eventually the streams of my life, my thinking, my hands, my life, is going to be polluted. So if we work the wicked ways, we will soon enjoy, as he says, eat of their dainties. In other words, be satisfied with the flesh. Here's a verse of Scripture, and it comes from Psalms, first Psalm. And here's where it says, and it's really appropriate with kind of what we're looking at tonight. Psalm 1:1, first verse says this: Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel, like the ideas or the ideology or the thinking of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners. It gets beyond your thinking and it becomes your way, your practice. Nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. You're comfortable now. You see the process. At first, you were just kind of thinking about evil ways. Then before long, you wasn't thinking, you was doing. And then you go from thinking and doing to sitting. You're comfortable. So he's just reminding us in that verse, and he's asking God in these two verses, God, I'm in a struggle. I'm in a difficulty. And sometimes in difficulties, we don't think straight. Our mouth gets in the wrong place. Our heart gets in the wrong place. I can't do this on my own. I need help. Honestly, even if I'm not struggling, I need God's help. I need the Word of God constantly evaluating my heart. That's why I don't care what you guys do, but every day at some point, be it morning, be it dinner time, be it evening, you need to give the Word of God access into your life. It's just like going into the bathroom in the morning and cutting the light on and seeing that you need to do a little work before you go out of the house. No different. When you let God take a look at your heart. So that's what he's asking God to do. You need to help my mouth, you need to help my heart. Now let's look at 5 and 6. Let the righteous, now this is a tough verse, but here's what he's asking God to do. Let the righteous smite me. Now that not mean physically smite. It means to reprove with a word. It means correction. So let the righteous correct me. It shall be a kindness. And let him reprove me. It shall be an excellent oil which shall not break my head. The Old Testament is really cool in the words that it uses. You know, it's not going to kill me, is what he's saying. So what's he asking God to do? No, really, he's inviting righteous people. He's giving them permission to admonish them. Correct. That's what David said. God, I need you to help me with my mouth. God, I need you to help me with my heart. And I'm good with other righteous men or other righteous people in my life reproving me and correcting me. What does Proverbs 27:6 say? Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. This psalmist, David, prefers reproof more than fun with the ungodly or the yes men of the unrighteous. The foolish resent reproof. The wise man, Proverbs says, and Ecclesiastes says, profits from it. So what he's asking God to allow is bring people in my life that will tell me the truth. Bring people in my life that will reprove me. I'm so thankful. Now, I'm being totally honest and transparent. There's been times when people have sat down with me down through the years. Might be an older pastor, might be someone in church, might be someone in my sphere of influence. Sat down and said some very negative things to me about maybe my attitude, my actions, that I'm telling you, on the inside, I was being stung like being stung by a bee, and my mouth was getting ready to get engaged. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't. But in either case, I needed to hear what they were saying. David was at the place in his life, I want that. I invite that. When I'm counseling people to get married, and some in this room might remember me saying that at some point, I've told them, you need to look at the lady that you're about to marry and say, look, please hurt my feelings. Tell me the truth. You do. And we need to do the same thing with other believers. That's what David's saying. Tell me the truth. Reprove me. And notice what he says. It's not going to break my head. It's going to be oil. You see that? It won't harm you. It will help you. It will heal you. It will refresh you. Listen, some of the best things my mama ever did for me was set me down and hurt my feelings. Because, man, 6 months later or 6 years later, I look back and I'm thinking, man, if she hadn't have said that, I was on a terrible exit. And what she said redirected my ship. So all he's saying is, it ain't going to kill you. Might hurt your feelings for a little bit, but it won't kill you. It'll refresh you. It'll be like perfume. That's an odd way of looking, at getting reproof. But look at the latter part of verse 5. I like this little cool added little thought here. For yet my prayer also shall be in their calamities. Let's think about that for just a minute. Somebody has just, had a conversation with you and it was kind of hurtful, but it was needed. You needed to hear it. But it did kind of sting a little bit, but you took it pretty good and you realized it was good words, true words, and you're going to try to fix what's going on. And then they go into a calamity. You're not over there saying, what comes around goes around. No, you pray for them. You didn't just appreciate the good word of reproof. When they go through a struggle, you're going to pray for them. I'm just telling you, David's got a deep, heavy, good prayer here. Look at verse 6. Now, this is a little hard to figure out what he's talking about. I'm just being honest. From what I've read, there's a lot of differing opinions. When their judges, there would be the Jewish people, judges would be leaders. So maybe they're talking about Saul. Are overthrown in stony places. So in other words, Saul is a bad leader, and when he's overthrown, they, the righteous, good people, the Jewish people, shall hear my words, David's words, for they are sweet. David's maybe thinking at some point when Saul's out of the picture, because Saul hated David, Saul pursued David, Saul disparaged David, but then when Saul was taken out of the picture, the people turned their hearts towards David. So maybe that's what he's alluding to in verse number 6. He's got hope that the struggle that he's in, maybe with Saul, maybe he's referring to Absalom, I don't know. But he's in a struggle and he sees it changing, and when it changes, he sees people coming back to maybe hear from him. Now let's look at the latter part of the verses 7 through 10. David's profession of trust in the Lord. This is like the center of the psalm, even though it's at the end, in my opinion. Now, verse 7 is a little tough to kind of figure out. Again, a lot I've read about, not real sure what he's referring to. Our bones, so it's not just the people in Israel, but himself, are scattered at the graves. In other words, he's just simply saying we're like skeletons awaiting to be buried. So at the grave's mouth. As when one cutteth and cleaveth wood, or somebody's cutting wood. So that they're cutting pieces of wood in pieces upon the earth. Now, what I've read on verse 7, during the time of Saul, the nation was in decline spiritually and in every way. So the people felt like dead people. David felt like dead people. They were a divided nation. So he's just relating in verse 7 how terrible it was during the reign of Saul. David felt the oppression. The people felt the oppression. But here's where the profession comes in verse number 8. Really 8, 9, and 10. But mine eyes. Now this is a great verse. This might be one of them verses you might want to highlight and put in your remembrances. But mine eyes, but in contrast to the way I feel, but in contrast to the fact that Saul's still leading, and spiritually and militarily and in all ways, it's a mess in the country, and we don't see no light at the end of the tunnel. We feel like a bunch of skeletons at the graveyard. So you get how he's feeling. But even though that's how I feel, in contrast with my present struggles and concerns, I'm just telling you, my eyes are fixed. Can I just remind you of a New Testament verse? And it's in Hebrews. When it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. That comes right after chapter 11, and in chapter 11 you got all these really great, faithful men. Not really them being that great, but their faith in God was that great. Faith was the key. God was the key. And he talks about seeing them in that first verse. Seeing them. Seeing means notice. Like, first Sunday I came here, I noticed we got flags in the auditorium. But it doesn't mean that I just need to stare at the flags. Like there's something really important in those flags. I don't really need to focus on the flags. Flags are up. Missions conference, missions month. But looking unto Jesus means focused attention. I don't know, and I need this. I'm not preaching this like I got it. I'm telling you, there's sometimes you need to take your eyes from what's going on in your world and noticing the flags and forget the flags for a minute and just see Christ. That's hard when life is difficult. It's hard when the news is bad. It's hard when the news don't change. It's hard, and I could go on of the things that make it hard. And that's what David was doing in this psalm, but he's just telling us, but that's my present, but here's what I'm doing. Mine eyes are unto thee. Now, when he says thee, he means attributes, he means promises, but it's him. Listen, I've missed my dad since 1996. He's been in heaven. He used to slip me money every time I went by to see him. I don't miss the money. There was promises he made to me, things we did, hunting and stuff, rabbit hunting and all that kind of stuff, and talking about guns. I enjoyed that. Enjoyed it. But it was him. David is reminding us it's not what God does. It's just him. That's what he's talking about. Mine eyes are fixed on you. Because some of the promises that I've experienced from you, they're great, but I'm in a mess right now, and I just know you are the only thing that can help me. That's where he's at. Mine eyes are fixed unto thee, O God, the Lord. In thee, says it again, in thee is my trust. Leave not my soul destitute. You know what he's saying in the latter part of the verse? It's not like he's worried about losing God. He's just simply saying, if I ain't got God, I ain't going to make it. You've made that statement before, no doubt, when we've been going through stuff, or maybe you're going through stuff with some other family in the church or whatever, a friend or family. How in the world could they make it without God? We've said that before. That's what he's saying. If I ain't got you over my soul, my life, breathing new life in me, I don't have anything else. I'm glad that Paul also tells us in that same book, God will never leave us nor forsake us. He again reminds us of his need. Keep me, not just my mouth, not just my heart, but keep all of me from the snares, that's back in 140, which they have laid for me, and the gins, traps of the workers of iniquity. Protect me from those things. I want you to make sure that I don't get caught in a snare, whether it be word or action, heart. I want the inside of me and the outside of me protected from the outside workers of iniquity. And then in verse 10, he says, let the wicked fall into their own nets, whilst that I withal escape. Free me, let me escape, deliver me, lead me from. But those that are giving cunning devices to catch me, let them fall into their own trap. That's the way he ends this prayer. Couple simple things, takeaways from Psalm 141. Not just Psalm 141, but Psalm 140, 142, and I think 143 kind of does the same thing. It never tells us, like in these Psalms, that it got better. Now it did. I mean, if Saul is being referenced in Psalm 141, then eventually he died, and David took the throne, but there was another trial and another trial. It's just simply reminding us of, yes, we're going to have trials in life, but the reality is that we have a place and a person that we can go to in trust and in prayer and in confidence and have hope. So I'd encourage all of us again tonight, and I know you do and I know you have, don't stop talking to God. Even if you can't figure out exactly what you need to say, just talk to God. You don't even have to use words, just do it in your head. He reads minds. He reads hearts. I mean, he's better than Verizon or anything you got. There ain't no mobile device that can touch what God does, because God knows your heart. So whatever the struggle of life, try to tune that out. Try to get that blurry. And focus on God and talk to him, because there's where your help is. All right. Heads are about, eyes are closed, and we'll have a word of prayer, and then we'll share some prayer requests tonight. Father, thank you again for the honesty of the Psalms. David doesn't cut no corners. David reveals the realities of life and the struggles of it from time to time. And some of it's his sin, sometimes it's just providence. It's just things that are happening that he don't understand. So God, he reminds us of the realities of life, and he also reminds us of where we can go to a God that cares. We know he cares because of the cross. A God that cares to go to a cross and die for my sins, cares for whatever the daily routines of my life and the burdens that I have. and the feelings that I have, he cares about all that too. Because all those are lesser values. He's already did the biggest thing for me in dying for me. Dying on the cross for all my sin. So all the stuff that kept me from God, he took out of the way so I can be with God in a relationship. So yes, everything else in my life is less than that. So yes, he cares. Thank you for reminding us. Thank you for reminding us tonight of when any believer gets out in his backyard and stares up at the stars, or reclines back in the lazy boy in his den, or sits on the front porch, or maybe if there's too much noise in the house, he just goes and gets in his car. And he turns his heart toward heaven. That you hear him. That you hear her. And you are inclined to them because you love them. And you will help them. And you will hear them. Remind us of the privilege that we have. That when we cry out to God, God gives us his ear. What a blessed privilege that is for us to have. We ask these things tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let me...